It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and we're looking at the movies released on December 14th, 1990. And we have a couple of comedies, a sequel. We also have Sidney Pollack and Bernardo Bertolucci's follow-ups to their Oscar-winning films Out of Africa and The Last Emperor. Neither one of them really matched that success, but we'll get to those movies when we get to them. Let's start with the biggest new release this week, and it's the sequel to last year's big hit, Look Who's Talking. It's Look Who's Talking 2. And again, right away, you can kind of see some of the problems with Look Who's Talking 2. It's pretty much a typical comedy sequel. It's definitely lesser than the previous movie. I will say, though, there are some things in this movie that actually were kind of interesting. Like, I'll give you this much. There's a couple of sequences in here that are like, they're kind of like nightmare sequences, dream sequences, but I will admit, when I watched this again recently, they still kind of freaked me out. Like, they did a pretty good job of saying, we're not going to show any mercy. We're going to show you what these kids really see everything as in their nightmares. And, the teddy bear and then the toilet coming to life. Like, I got to admit, that really freaked me out when I watched this again. I'll give it that. But, I mean, for the most part, yeah, there's a lot of problems with this movie. I think the biggest problem, like I said, is sequelitis. It's them pretty much rehashing the same premise as the first movie. The characters have really regressed in this movie compared to where they were in the last movie. Like, it feels like Kirstie Alley and John Travolta really have not learned anything, and they're just the difference is that they're married and now they have 2 kids, and now they have to work on their relationship again. And it's just like, we saw this already in the first movie, except this time, yeah, they're married now, but you couldn't at least think of something better than that? I mean, and the voice work is okay. I mean, Bruce Willis, Roseanne Barr, Damon Wayans, and there's also a couple of other ones in here, new voices that they add in here. They're not bad, but in this movie in particular, you really start to notice the mouths moving now on their own, and there was a lot of that in the first movie whatsoever. Like, you didn't see them. The mouths weren't moving like someone was sticking peanut butter in these kids' mouth, because that's what it looks like in this trailer. Like, if you see Bruce Willis moving his lips around, I don't know if they were trying to get the kids to speak like what Bruce Willis is saying, but I don't know. It's a weird thing to do for this. It's just like, it doesn't look right whatsoever, at least to me, at least. But interesting fun fact I found out, if you watch the original teaser trailer for this, Damon Wayans' character, who becomes the best friend of Bruce Willis's character, was actually supposed to be played by Richard Pryor, and like in the early teaser trailers for this, it even has Eddie voiced by Richard Pryor in there, and I guess they took a line from one of his movies or something, or he didn't record anything, and they just took it from another movie. But yeah, they do have the little clip player. I don't have the trailer here, but if you go online and look for the first teaser trailer for Look Who's Talking 2, it's definitely on there. But yeah, for the most part, Look Who's Talking 2 is pretty much a letdown, especially compared to the first movie. It definitely suffers from sequelitis. There are a couple things that make it kind of stand out, but it's not something I'd want to watch over and over again. It's definitely a very underwhelming movie, but I give it credit for the stuff that it did right, so at least there's that. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, the other comedy that came out this weekend. Cher, Bob Hoskins, Winona Ryder, and a young Christina Ricci in Mermaids. Directed by Richard Benjamin, this was actually supposed to be the English film debut for director Lasse Hallström, but he would actually make his directorial debut with Once Around, which comes out a month after this, which we'll definitely get into that one. But for the most part, the movie is pretty good. Like, it works. This is one of those movies where you kind of feel like from the trailer they're trying to rip off Beaches. I mean, Beaches and Mermaids, pretty much kind of the same title, or something like Terms of Endearment, but it doesn't do that. It actually does something very good on its own. Like, the performances really do stand out here. Cher's really good here, as is Bob Hoskins and Winona Ryder. Like I said, you have a young Christina Ricci just before she did The Addams Family, which comes out the year after this. And overall, it is a pretty good movie. It's a movie that, it's not one that I'd watch on repeat over and over, but it is a fun movie. It's a well-made film. The performances really do work here. It's kind of generic, but it also does stuff that makes it stand out on its own. The soundtrack overall is pretty good. Some great music here by Jack Nitzsche, but also this movie actually had a new rendition of It's In His Kiss, which is actually really good from Cher. If you haven't heard that one, definitely check that one out. But yeah, for the most part, this is a really good movie. I really had a lot of fun with it. And, Christina Ricci, I talked about her. This is kind of a breakout role. This was another winner for Winona Ryder, too, in 1990. Think about what she was doing. She did this, Edward Scissorhands, and Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael. And, I mean, this is really, like, stepping up in her career, because she really would have progression over the next couple of years in this decade. And she really becomes one of the great young actresses of the time, so... And this movie was another great example of that. So, yeah, that's my quick thoughts on Mermaid. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Sidney Pollack's follow-up to his Oscar winner Out of Africa, Robert Redford and Lena Olin in Havana. Yeah, the movie didn't really work out as well as I think they wanted it to. It felt like Sidney Pollack was trying to make another Out of Africa while also trying to make the next great epic romance like Gone with the Wind, or something that Universal would do like a couple years later with Far and Away. But you really can't have that magic to it, because as big as the production value for this can look, you still need a good story. You still need some good characters, and there's really none of that here. This is a mess of a movie all around. For Robert Redford doesn't usually pick bad movies like this a lot, but it's not a good movie. Like, a lot of great actors in here. Lena Olin, Alan Arkin, Raul Julia, who was uncredited because the film's producers wouldn't give him the above-the-title credit with Redford and Olin. I mean, and that's another black eye for Julia in December, because he also had The Rookie the week before, and that didn't end up doing well. And, yeah, it's just not a good movie. It's a boring movie. It's a great-looking film, but there's really nothing to it story-wise or character-wise. You can't relate to any of these characters. You can't get invested in their stories. You can't get really into it, because everything that's going on has just been there, done that, and there's nothing new or exciting that's really making it stand out on its own. And like I said, it only made $9 million off of a $40 million budget. That's a huge failure for a movie with this much money to it. And is there anything really good about this? I mean, you got a good score by Dave Grusin, and Dave Grusin is probably one of the most underrated composers of the 80s. I mean, this is the guy that did the St. Elsewhere theme, which is one of the great underrated theme songs of all time. So, I mean, but yeah, the score from him is really good. That's really the only thing I can really say about this movie that's positive, but everything else about it is just bad. It's just not a very good movie whatsoever. So, with that said, let's go to the other director who had a follow-up to his Oscar-winning film, Bernardo Bertolucci. After The Last Emperor, he gives us The Sheltering Sky. Sorry, I couldn't really find a whole lot there in terms of clip-wise, but I'll give this movie credit. It's at least a little bit better than Havana is, but after Bernardo Bertolucci made The Last Emperor, which I just watched again recently, and I think that's a fantastic movie that not a lot of people really talk about. It's honestly one of the best Oscar-winning Best Picture movies of that decade, honestly. If you really look back on it, the visuals in that movie still hold up to this very day, and a lot of the same people who made that movie are still involved with this project here. You got a great cast, including Deborah Winger, John Malkovich, Campbell Scott, and just a lot of good, interesting ideas here. Just not really a good story to really tell all about it. I think the performances and the visuals really do keep it afloat. Unlike Havana, where pretty much everything was a waste, there's actually some effort here, but it just doesn't have that lasting power that something like The Last Emperor does, or some of the other great movies that Bernardo Bertolucci's been involved with. So, I guess to this movie's credit, it's not as bad as Havana is, which really, it says a lot, but in terms of it being a good follow-up to The Last Emperor, it really isn't it. It's just a movie that's kind of like, it's not a bad movie, but it's not a good movie either. It's definitely in the middle. It's a movie that has so much more promise to it than it actually shows on the screen. So that's my thoughts on The Sheltering Sky. So with that said, that's going to wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. Next time around, we look at the week before Christmas, and we've got... Well, here's the thing. We've got 7 movies to look at, because on Box Office Mojo, if you go to that weekend of December 21st, there's only one movie there. That's one of the 7 we'll look at, but I went over to the Wikipedia page. So next time around, we'll look at Paul Hogan's follow-up to Crocodile Dundee, Almost an Angel. We'll also look at Franco Zeffirelli's Hamlet with Mel Gibson and Glenn Close. Sean Connery and Michelle Pfeiffer in The Russia House. Tom Hanks, Bruce Willis, and Melanie Griffith and Brian De Palma's The Bonfire of the Vanities. The American release of Kiki's Delivery Service. The biggest new release of that week, obviously, which was Arnold Schwarzenegger in Kindergarten Cop. And then Sissy Spacek and Whoopi Goldberg in The Long Way Home. So those 7 movies we'll look at the next time around. And until then, thank you guys for watching. As always, if you want to see more videos like this, check out the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for another video. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And until then, take care.